We're ready to move it up a little bit. It's time to introduce our keynote speaker. And our fantastic keynote speaker this morning is Nicole Stott, presenting Back to Earth, an Orbital Perspective. Nicole, known as the Artistic Astronaut, has explored from the heights of outer space to the depths of our oceans. In awe of what she experienced from these very special vantage points, she's dedicated her life to sharing the beauty of space and Earth with others. And she believes that sharing these orbital and inner space perspectives has the power to increase everyone's appreciation of and obligation to care for our home planet and each other. So let's please give a warm Earthling welcome to Nicole Stott.
Well, it is really great to be here. And I'd like to throw a thank you out to Tim Rummage for introducing me to this group and for the committee inviting me today. And I will echo the commissioner's remarks that it's really nice to see the house full. I think when you're looking at perspectives and solutions and bringing a community together, I'll talk a little later about what we do in space that I think is a model for what we should be doing down here on planet Earth. And it's, to me, a matter of scale. We're here in a room in Sarasota today as part of this community, but we can look globally, which I honestly think is, global's like the new local, it's really a matter of scale for bringing people together like this and not just talking about, but really acting on the solutions. So I'm starting with a slide today. You can see the beautiful horizon of the planet and this idea of back to Earth and an orbital perspective, because I flew to space, but what flying to space did for me was it brought me back to Earth. That time in space brought me home. And while there are a lot of complex things that go on while you're living and working in space, like spacewalks and the science and maintaining the space station and your environment around you, what I came home with really were three very simple lessons that I wanted to share today. And these will seem like, obviously, especially to you guys, simple lessons. We live on a planet, we're all Earthlings, and the only border that matters is that thin blue line of atmosphere that blankets us all. And these three lessons for me were based on experiencing that orbital perspective of seeing Earth from space. But I absolutely do not believe that you have to fly to space to appreciate and acknowledge and respect these three lessons and incorporate them into your daily life. And my guess is that all of you in here already knew those three lessons and that they're part of your daily life already. And I think I have a flicker. Let's see if I can make it work. All right. So I show you this slide. It looks like a really peaceful silhouette of, this is the orbiter Space Shuttle Atlantis in the view. And I show it because this is the one picture that reminds me, all in one picture, of what it was like to live and work in space, to be in space. And it does that because it's really beautiful. And I can tell you the view from space, the experience in space is very beautiful. But I know by looking at this that it's not just a still image. I know that we in that space shuttle are traveling 17,500 miles an hour or 5 miles a second around our planet. So every 90 minutes, 16 times a day, traveling around the Earth. And when we do that, that means about every 45 minutes or so, we get one of these really stunning sunrises or sunsets out the window. And I also know that I'm not alone. I'm in this picture with my 5 crewmates, and we're coming home after our missions and going home back to Earth to our families. And I know that I still have a connection there because the person who took this picture was somebody I shared a little over 3 months of time on the space station with, Jeff Williams. So he took this shot for us to have as a memory of that time in space. And what it reminds me of, too, though, is that while I was in space, while I was the farthest I probably ever will be from our planet, the most physically separated, I absolutely felt more connected to everything and everyone down here than I did, probably all of the time that I was right down here in the middle of it. And I have taken that with me ever since. And it's made me realize, I don't know if it's that absence makes the heart grow fonder thing, or, allowing yourself that different perspective, that separating, that makes you really realize what you have in another place or with the people you share it with. But for sure, that separation has left me feeling more connected than I ever did before. All right, so this is the International Space Station. Everybody in here knows about the International Space Station, right? Yes, thank you. Okay, that's a good start. Absolutely a wonderful start. So for my 105 days in space, this was my home, this international place. And I could absolutely, especially with this group, speak all day long to just this one picture. And I don't think you'll find a more off the grid place to live than here. Those ginormous solar arrays. Every piece of power energy that we get is generated by the sun, collecting the sun in those solar arrays. We store them in big batteries along the outside of the station. It gets distributed throughout the station, and then all the heat that's generated inside the station and for that power to work is those white thermal radiators reject that heat and manage that for us. You can see that the kind of, I don't know if I've got a thing. Oh, I do. Look at that. These little kind of can-looking places, those are the pressurized modules, or the place where we live and work. And it's at sea level pressure, so I can float around in my t-shirt and my shorts and not have to have a spacesuit on all the time. And it is absolutely the most amazing place. And it is. It's wonderful, I think, in a number of ways, certainly for the science and everything that goes on up there, what it was designed for, I guess. But I think there's two really important things about it. And the space station motto kind of says it. The space station program motto is off the Earth, for the Earth. And while we are certainly learning how to live in space, what's going on with our bodies and the kind of equipment we need, we're learning how to perhaps go back to the moon and actually establish a permanent presence there. We're learning how we would explore further out into our universe, that next step to Mars and on. But ultimately, everything about it is about improving life here on Earth. And I think that's a pretty cool thing. And underlying that are two really important things. The first, I think, is that the international relationships that have been established through this program. 15 countries peacefully, successfully working together, not just the 6 crew members who are one crew under one commander with representative from those countries, working on this space station together, but tens of thousands of people down here on Earth across the 5 different international space programs, working together peacefully, successfully, and I would argue sustainably for this greater mission. And that doesn't mean that there weren't different political or technical priorities across these different countries, but we have absolutely done what we needed to right from the very start to, I call them the rules of engagement. We established those. We wrote the operating manual for not just how mechanically we would manage that system in space, but for how we would politically and socially manage the challenges that happen there in space and across those different space programs. And then we also have absolutely built a mechanical system in space that mimics what the Earth does for us down here naturally. And that's pretty cool. We very deliberately design a mechanical system to operate in space that does what Earth does for us naturally. And it seems really simple. It's like, people have to live there, so you have to do that. But on top of that, with the operating manual, we've recognized we're in a closed loop system. we can only have so many people here because we only can have generate this much clean drinking water. We can only keep this much air clean for us. This is how we have to process everything to be able to survive there. And we can only generate this much electricity. If we want more, we have to, reduce something else or consider that we need another solar array. Those kinds of things are very deliberately, and I use that word deliberately because I think it says a lot. We have overcome this challenge that we have right here on Earth and haven't written the operating manual for. And I will point at Tim again because, his work echoes this same thing. And I love to think about the fact that for the past 20 years, this has been going on. 16 times a day, every day for 20 years, there has been a crew, an international crew, orbiting us, working peacefully and successfully together. And that also impresses me because my son is 16 years old. And for as long as he has been alive, that has been going on. And it's the best model for us, I think, down here on Earth. This next one. This is why we build that life support system in space, because to live and work in space, it really is all about the people. And I would say again, now we need to apply this model to life support and of healthy, peaceful, sustainable, and successful cooperation back here on Spaceship Earth. And a lot of you will know this, Tim for sure. I'm going to keep pointing at you, Tim, you're right in the middle. In the words of Buckminster Fuller and of Tim and his partner David, we need to become not just the crew of space stations, but the crew of Spaceship Earth. Not just passengers, but crew. And my sense is that all of you here are already on board with that all of you here get that. And I'm really thankful for that. I'm thankful to be here with you, and I'm thankful that you're out in the community spreading that good word through the actions you're taking here in Sarasota that I know will spread even further. And just as a comment on this, I usually use this picture with kids to describe to them that, the best people to work with, and I hope you all have this same experience, are the ones that you're going to have a good time with. And I would argue that you should have a good time when you're working in space too. But that you also know when it hits the fan, because it will, when it doesn't go the way you've planned, that those people you're with will have your back. And I think that's the kind of people that are in this room today. And I think that's the kind of people, the kind of community that we want to build, here on our whole planet, on Spaceship Earth. And I will say that just because the question always comes up, what's with the clown noses? There's a gentleman in this picture, Guy Laliberté. He's the owner and founder of Cirque du Soleil. And he apparently had, there's been several people that have been able to do this. He had a spare $40–50 million to allow him to fly as what we call a spaceflight participant or a tourist up to the space station. He spent 10 days up there with us. And you'll see there's 9 people in this picture. Normally there's only a crew of 6 on board the station, but we overlapped a 3-person crew swap. And so Guy got to come up with that crew, and then he went home with them about 10 days later. And you can also see my buddy Frank de Vinne here. He was the first European commander of the space station. He's from Belgium, and you can see the different flags, but we all were one crew. All right, so this might look familiar. When I got to space, I didn't think much about the fact that we live on a planet, we're all Earthlings, and that whole idea of the thin blue line. But when you get there, it is absolutely in your face. But when I first did get there, I wanted, there was kind of this evolution I went through looking through the window and looking at Earth. And believe me, it surprises you every time you look at it. But I wanted to see something familiar. Like even when I came to the place today, I was so happy to see Tim. I was like, okay, I know Tim. You look for the familiar first, right? I wanted to see Florida when I was in space. And I hope you'll agree that Florida is equally as beautiful from space as it is down here. And here we are down here somewhere today having our meeting. But here's a wider view of Florida. And I remember thinking when I first got to space, wow, I floated in, there were these windows, and they're not big and, huge where you're noticing the outside view all the time. You have to, float over and fly over to look out the window. But it surprised me every time. It didn't matter if I was flying over the same place. Something about it, the way the clouds were, the weather, was it night or day, would surprise me. And I thought, man, I wonder if after like a month, you're going to want to pull the shutter down on the window and watch the movie, if that's going to be, your preference. And it absolutely isn't. I can also tell you, if you're flying on a plane with me, you probably don't want to be next to me because I am the one that keeps the shade up during the during the flight. But while all of the, the looking at Earth, the surprising things about Earth, wanting to see Florida at first, and then it evolved to like a geography lesson and, just seeing things that were beautiful and not really caring where it was. The thing that happened that surprised me the most, but it wasn't like the shocking revelation, was that idea of, wow, I came here thinking Florida was my home, and now it's just like morphed into this planet is my home. And I want everybody to feel that way. And I think the things that you guys are doing helps everybody feel that way. And I think by this, I finally started thinking about our home as a planet. I started recognizing that the undeniable interconnectivity of everything and everyone that was below me. And I started recognizing this need, I will tell you, for the total respect of this very thin blue line that surrounds us, that blankets and protects us all. Very fragile, thin blue line. And at night, the views, and you'll see in a little video I show you, you get a little bit of a line above that, but it's not that much thicker. And so that is the only time you look at Earth and Earth looks big, is when you look at it against the backdrop of that thin blue line. Let's see. I think I'm stuck for some reason. Now I'll probably go ahead five slides. Greg, is there a reason why? Oh, there we go. All right, is that the one I want? Yep, that's it. Okay, so I also started thinking about how when we explore, when we go out, even, when I came here today, it was discussed like driving through here and you're seeing the wildlife and how the paths kind of weaved through back to this building. When, I traveled from St. Pete to Sarasota today, you're always kind of looking for some connection to yourself, kind of back to yourself. Certainly that view of Florida from space was that connection, kind of back to what I thought of as home. And, it made me realize that, as a planet, we're out here in this universe, and even when we travel to distant places, not even as, physically as human beings, but when we've sent our robotic, probes out to places like Saturn, to Mars, even to the moon, what we end up really looking for, we're discovering all these things about that place, but the picture that really gets us is the one that has us in it. The one that allows us oh wow, there we are, that connection back to ourselves, that allows us to see ourselves in that bigger picture. I'm gonna point it, oh, you doing it? I don't know why. There we go. Oop, yep, okay. Oh, no, it skipped ahead. It's always I technically challenged, sorry. Even now, with some of the new missions going on, this BFR rocket that SpaceX has, and their little, really I would say publicity stunt, although quite interesting, and the fact that it's a Tesla. Where's our electric car guy? Yeah. This red Sportster in space. And we could talk all day, too, about the controversy of whether we're polluting the universe with this, too, but we'll just go with the positive messaging here. Very heavy metal to me. I mean, if that reference, clicks with you. The star man or star woman in the driver's seat there. But what really do you end up looking at in this picture? What really, I hope, captures your excitement is, to me, it's that blue planet behind that vehicle. It's like this whole new look at, us back at Earth from space. And for sure, if you fly in space, I would argue if you go and, anywhere, if you have a special experience, if you, take a vacation somewhere that, you never thought you would be able to do, you want to share it. And I can tell you that every astronaut wants to share the spaceflight experience, and they want to do so in a meaningful way. And each of us, like I would say everyone in this room, everyone here has kind of their passion mission now, right? With respect to, we can just use sustainable communities. But there's a power in coming together with it too. And I think every astronaut has their passion mission. For me, that's, I've been able to tie my love of art and my spaceflight experience together and engage audiences that didn't even know we have a space station. But also extend that to communities like pediatric cancer patients who are going through what you hope is the most traumatic thing, the worst thing they ever have to go through in their life, and you bring the inspiration of spaceflight to them, you bring art to them, and it allows them to transcend that experience they're having in the hospital. And I've been fortunate to work with a group called the Space for Art Foundation, and that's what we're doing. We're taking art into these communities and around the world now, and very simply building things like art spacesuits out of them, and some of which have traveled to the space station. But the real point is we're allowing kids that are going through these things to engage with other kids around the world, so they now are realizing, of course we use the Earthling and Planet thing with them, so they're realizing that their crew on Spaceship Earth, and that child in Uganda is not that far away from the kid in Ohio, and they get it, they understand it. Also, in terms of the power of bringing it together, there's a group of astronauts that are working now on something called Constellation.Earth, and really it's to bring our stories together, to try to present the message in a more impactful way, really getting down to this idea of the interconnectivity of everything and everyone, the need for long-term thinking, for profound collaboration, for these kinds of groups to expand, for it to be that matter of scale, that it becomes not just us in this room in Sarasota, but all of us across the planet thinking the same way. And Greg, can we skip to the video really quick? So I'm going to show you like a 3-minute video, and then we'll come back with like just 2 closing slides, and I think we'll be perfect timing-wise.
Got a package full of wishes, a time machine, a magic wand, a globe made out of gold. No instructions or commandments, laws of gravity or indecisions to uphold. Printed on the box I see, Acme's build a world to be. Take a chance, grab a piece, help me to believe it. What kind of world do you want? Think anything. Let's start at the start, build a masterpiece. Be careful what you wish for. History starts now. Should there be people or peoples? Money, funny pedestals for fools who never pay. Raise your army, choose your steeple. Don't be shy, the satellites can look the other way. Lose the earthquakes, keep the faults, fill the oceans without the salt. Let every man own his own hand. Can you dig it, baby? What kind of world do you want? Think anything. Let's start at the start, build a masterpiece. Be careful what you What kind of world do you want? What kind of world do you want? What kind of world do you want? They ain't get anything. Let's start at the start. Build a masterpiece. Yeah. History starts now. Starts now. Be careful what you wish for. Start now. Now.
So, Greg, we can go back to the PowerPoint and to the next slide. Back one. Okay. Well, I love that video because I think it asks the right question, first of all, and it gives a little bit more, like, some movement inside and some life to the space station and the people there. But I think it really does ask the right question. And this image here, I think there's no better one. I mean, absolutely no better one that brings our attention to, back to the who and where we all are, and, the need for us to respect that. This year, this image is that iconic Earthrise. It was taken by Apollo 8 crew, and this is the 50th anniversary this year in December of that mission. And it was the first time that we sent human beings to the moon. They didn't land, but they circled it, and it was the first time with human eyes that we got this view of our planet. And I think it just, it reminds us that those three simple things. We live on a planet, we're all Earthlings, and the only border that matters is that thin blue line of atmosphere that blankets us all. And because we're here today, I want, and because this is the 50th anniversary of Earthrise, I wanted to share with you guys, because I think you would find it interesting. On December 21st, which is the 50th anniversary of the launch of the Apollo 8 mission, our Constellation group is holding an event at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. It'll be an evening event after hours, and I think you would find it really fun. We're going to do a little celebrating out under the Apollo Saturn V rocket, and they have the historic mission control from Apollo 8 there, and then we'll be coming back and doing a little party underneath Atlantis, and I think that you guys would enjoy it. And there are early bird tickets on sale until December 7th. But anyway, so thank you very much for having me with you today. I hope that this perspective can kick off a lot of great discussion and solutions and follow-on action from your meeting today. So thank you. And I think, do we have time for questions, John?
Okay,
All right.
We've got some Mentimeter questions up there.
Okay.
How does one respond to statements like President Trump's that Earth is a terrible planet? And
Oh my
there are better
gosh.
ones out there?
How had I not heard that one? Oh my gosh. I don't, those are the kinds of things I'm like, do you go all namaste and find your happy place and not respond because of the kind of, banter you could expect if you did? I think we respond by doing things like this. I mean, honestly, I think we do. We respond by doing things like this. I've kind of looked at, what's going on recently and tried to find like the bright spot in it. Where's the bright spot? And what I find is things like this, like things that went on over at the, is it the Van Wezel, a couple weeks ago? Those kinds of things that you guys are doing. The awareness that is being raised now, like I've never seen before, I mean, not in the last 8 years, not in the 8 years before it. There was like this complacency, like somebody was going to take care of us almost. And what I see happening now is people really and positively energized and taking action independently and as groups like this. And then that to me is going the power of that good, I believe. I am much more of the utopic ideas than the dystopic. I'm a Star Trek Earthrise future versus, I don't know, Star Wars, I don't know, you know. And I think that it's this kind of thing that is the response to that.
Here's another one, Nicole. How does your time in the underwater habitat resonate with your time in space?
Wow. So the time underwater, and if you guys don't know about this place, there's a habitat called Aquarius right off the coast of Key Largo. It sits about 60 feet underwater. It's the only undersea habitat like this. It's about the size of a school bus. And I spent 18 days living and working with a crew of 6 in that hab. And it's about the habitat, it's about the size of one of the modules on the space station. And it was absolutely the best analog to what it was like to live and work in space. And that was everything from kind of the relative proximity to your crewmates, the kinds of stuff that went on inside of the hab, the fact that you really were living in an extreme environment. You couldn't just swim to the surface to get away, because once you were down there for an hour, your body was too saturated with nitrogen. You couldn't just swim to the surface. That it was not an option. And just like in space, you can't just go hop in the spaceship and, you know, fly home anytime you want. And you can't just walk out the door without special equipment and all of that on. So I would say absolutely best analog to flying in space, you know, from that kind of training and prep standpoint. But also in terms of like getting to know the planet. And we really kind of, you know, in the astronaut office, we joke about it as this inner space versus outer space perspective. And that undersea mission was like our inner space perspective. And you go from being like this macro view of seeing the planet to kind of this micro view, and you become the one in the aquarium that the 2 Goliath grouper were looking in the window at us every, you know, night saying, oh, I wonder, you know, what fleshy ones are in there, you know, in there now. And it's another really wonderful appreciation for and in complete, utter contrast to what that statement would be. Yeah.
So how can we help encourage and engage youth in careers in space and sustainability?
Wow, I think, you know, to me that's an awareness thing too. I think I saw some kids here today. Were there some kids here earlier that were students were in, you're not kids though. There were like, but students, yeah. You know, I think that's, you know, we have, just like as an astronaut, I feel like I have an obligation to be present. Like to be, and in that, you know, elementary school through university, especially audience. And I would say for young women, to do that, we got to get them by middle school. We've got to be out there present, showing that there are women doing things that we might otherwise think for some reason are not possible. And we got to let them know that the rocket ship doesn't care if you're a boy or girl. That's, you know, I think that's true for everything. And I think events like this, being out in the community, that's to me the easiest way to make it happen.
So you said our missions to colonize the moon and other planets are to improve life on Earth. We've been horrible stewards of our own planet.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, you know, I just watched, if you haven't watched, there's a relatively new film called Earthrise that's out there that, you know, it has some recent conversations with the Apollo 8 crew. And one of the things they say even is that, you know, kind of their disappointment in that we haven't acted on that Earthrise message, really. And that we haven't done everything. You know, I mean, they acknowledge that we have to admit, a lot has improved, but we're still not quite there. And I don't know if it was Borman or Anders that says, you know, when we start talking about going back to the moon, when we look at going on to Mars, the first thing we need to do is figure out how to operate on our own spaceship, Earth in space, like we have on the International Space Station. And then you take that collectively as human beings, as Earthlings with you to the moon and to Mars. And I think that's the way it's going to have to happen, really. And if you look at kind of the fallout of the International Space Station program, There's really not any space mission out there now that doesn't involve multiple countries. And that might just be coming down to like financial, political decisions because nobody wants to fund it all themselves. But really that ends up being a good thing because instead of going to the moon with just 1 or 2 countries, we should be expanding on the 15 countries that we already have involved with the space station program. We could talk all day about that one too.
So, what responses do you get to that beautiful question, what kind of world do you want?
Well,
How's that being shared?
well, I think that, I can just speak personally, really. What I want is that world where we really are all, that we just from birth consider ourselves crew. And that seems a little, I don't know if it seems technically, or what, like the word crew. But to me, the experience that I've had, crew implies team at the most amazing level. It really is about not just enjoying, but thriving in the place where you are. That everybody, it's not, when an emergency happens on the space station, the U.S. crew members aren't saying, oh my gosh, I hope that's not in the U.S. module. And, if it's in the Russian module, they'll take care of it. There's, you got to like show your badge to cross the, hatch to get in. I mean, it's one station with one crew. And if you don't solve the problem, wherever it is, you are not solving the problem for everyone. And that's that matter of scale thing to me too. I mean, if we can live in space on a man-made, human-made, mechanical system that supports life and where we thrive there. We're not like, scavenging. I mean, we thrive there. We can do that here. And that, I know it sounds almost too simplified, but I really believe it is. And that view of Earth that way, it's why I love Google Earth. Unless you change the settings on Google Earth, what is the first thing you see? You see this tiny little planet first, and then you have to decide to go in and look for where you are or where it is you want to, learn more about. And it's like literally it's like we hold all of us, the whole world in our hands now. And that to me is why if we can start thinking like global is local, because it really is, that, that's the kind of thing that's going to make the shift, I think.
So we're not going to be able to get to all these questions,
Okay.
but here's a great one. Do they give haircuts?
Absolutely. I could have shown you a picture.
Okay.
Like once a month we do haircuts. You got to take care of yourself up there like you do down here. That was so much fun to do. I had 5 guys that were my crewmates, and we get the clippers out to do that. For me, I would wet my hair. I had very long hair on the station. I would wet it, put it in a ponytail, and just like do that Cupid doll thing straight up, and then I'd just ask them, just cut an inch off. And it's all about the glamour in space, believe me. And it is never a good hair day in space, but that's part of the adventure. But yeah, you'd get the razor out and the clippers. But the thing about haircuts, it kind of is demonstrates about living there in general is, imagine if you did a haircut, here you do it and it falls on your shoulder, it falls down to the floor and you can just sweep it up. Up there, all those little pieces of hair would just get out, into the air. And so the clippers we have a vacuum hose on the end of it, and then we keep the separate vacuum ready to kind of do it, because you don't want that in your eyes, you don't want to breathe it in, you don't want it in, in the systems around you. So,
So
but
we're
yeah.
out of time, Nicole, but I got
Yes.
one more question for you.
Okay.
Just real quick, but who or what inspired you to pursue a career in space?
Well, I would say that was my parents primarily. They always just shared what they loved with me, and I feel like I got the best of both of them that way. My husband and I are trying to do that with our son, whether he decides to pursue what we love or not. I think it allows him to figure out what he is inspired by, what he does enjoy. My mom is a wonderfully creative woman. My dad built and flew small airplanes in our garage and at Clearwater Air Park. I grew up in Clearwater. And just having that passion for flying around me got me to the point I wanted to know how things fly. I think if you want to know how things fly, why would you not want to know how rocket ships fly? We had that wonderful Kennedy Space Center right there. This shuttle program was really getting going as I was graduating from high school, and yeah. But I'll tell you, back to that question about inspiring kids in STEM and stuff, or, you know, or in appreciating the environment around them and doing work that supports that. I second-guessed myself the whole way along. It wasn't until I was like 9 of 10 years working at Kennedy Space Center as an engineer that I even thought that it would even be possible for me to even think about picking up the pen and filling out an application. And it took me seeing astronauts coming through and seeing what they do, like that, you know, 99.9% of an astronaut's job is not flying in space. It's down here on Earth. And 80% of that job was already a lot like what I was already doing as a NASA engineer. And then the ultimate thing was speaking to people I consider to be mentors, and they did probably nothing more than just tell me to pick up the pen, you know, like, Nikki, pick up the pen and fill out the application. And I thank them every time I see them.
Well, let's
Yeah.
hear it for
Thank
awesome
you.
astronaut Nicole.